Hi, I'm Brenden Gibbons, game and narrative designer and co-writer of Say No More, and I'm here to talk to you about our game and about empowering through play. Say No More is a no-playing game, a role-playing game that focuses on allowing the player to express no how they want. You play as an intern who lives in a world where naysaying is forbidden. You start your first day in your new job, and after your supervisor stole your lunch, you learn the power of saying no through a magical cassette tape and climb up the corporate ladder as you try to get your lunch back. Say No More started as a simple idea in the mind of the game director and co-writer Marius Finzer. Isn't it fun to bother non-player characters? The initial concept was a game where you can do 4 things: say yes, no, maybe, and interesting. What do you think? But this was further distilled when the prototype showed that the most fun was in saying no. An office setting seemed natural, and soon enough the first prototype was made with Nicholas Meyerhofer and was shown off at various festivals.
Internship Survival Guide, Lesson 2, No.
Did you just start your internship and were destroyed by your co-workers? Did you unjam the printer or what? No. Huh? You know tech, right? No. Huh? So, the breakfast, did you get? No.
The slapstick physics and exaggerated voice acting made for a short and fun demo, but what Marius kept noticing was that afterwards, it would strike conversation about people's relationship with the word no. The mechanic, the ability to freely say no without consequence, kept making people reflect on their relationship with the word, with their own boundaries, and this reaction told him that this was an important game that needed to exist. With Thunderful's backing, Marius asked me to join him, since we had worked before on another of Studio Fizbin's game, Minute of Islands, and we began writing. There was already a strong skeleton of the story. Marius had a strong vision of the more personal sides of the story. He had his personal struggles with saying no to friends and wanted to explore the general anxieties of saying no in social situations. I, meanwhile, took it as a chance to explore saying no in a workplace setting. After all, I'm closely connected to multiple game development unions, and aside from some of my personal negative experience with the world of work, I have listened firsthand to many workers being confronted with health-destroying overwork, harassment, and other issues. It made me work hard to make sure that while things may feel absurd, that it was always analogous to reality. And it was a bit of a tightrope walk. The game was already full of absurdity, and I took that chance to actually turn the dial a bit further, because I personally believe we have a rotting and absurd relationship to our work in this late-stage capitalist society that we live in, and we kind of see that in our industry. Like, do we even understand what working 100-hour weeks mean? That means you're working 14 hours every single day of the week, and if you sleep for 8 hours, it leaves only 2 hours a day to eat, bathe, stare longingly at a photo of your loved ones before you go back programming virtual horse testicles shrinking in the virtual cold for months on end. Even if there is an amount of money that can pay the actual worth of this labor and make up for the mental and physical harm that it's causing, that value is simply stolen by the management. We don't even have to go far to see a very direct example. In April 2021, we saw the news that CD Projekt Red CEOs stood to receive more than $6.3 million each from their efforts that ultimately amounted to such dire mismanagement of their company that their game had to be removed from storefronts. The game industry is ridiculous. We toil to make time-wasting luxuries for the world's rich and lower middle classes. After all, to access video games, you need to have your needs met, a stable power and internet connection, some pieces of hardware, and that is worth at least 250 euros, which can be many months' worth of wages. What we make does not materially affect those deep in poverty, but what we make can and does affect those who can access it, and what we make can allow people to hope and dream. It is a power inherent in all media, and it is how art changed the world. To me, the strength of games, whether digital or analog, are threefold: in their playfulness, their immersion, and their systems. I've seen many works that use the last two to create experiences that try to elicit empathy in others, but it can be deeply fraught because ultimately it's up to the player to get what they want out of the game. And with Say No More, we could have made something that was sad or serious, that raises awareness and conversation, but that's not the point of the game. The game is an everyday power fantasy that hones in on the absurdity of saying yes by portraying the absurdity of saying no. Through playfulness, we had made something accessible, clear, cathartic, and empowering. So instead of just raising awareness, it's time to empower through dreaming of better futures. I have 4 core takeaways for your next project. Number 1, use video game systems to convey systemic issues. Games have the power to talk about systems because games are systems, and if you need more examples, you only need to look at Muller Industrious works. And for our system, it was to empower you against systemic workplace abuse and end up being entirely focused on the ability to say no and the ability for you to express saying no. Number 2, bring in real-life analogs and recontextualize them. This can happen both in bigger and smaller picture, and the more you can make it resonate, the better. For a big picture example, power abuse in workplaces happens both overtly, covertly, with good intentions, and ultimately is a very vicious cycle. And in the bigger picture, we're recontextualizing these ideas and these literal bosses and power abuse as enemy bosses to say no to. We're not just repeating what happens in real life here, we're actually giving you, someone who normally don't have power over these people, power over them. And for a smaller picture example, we have a very specific phrase in our game where it says,
imagine a world where instead of working all 7 days, we get to work 5 days and rest for 2.
We kind of genuinely forget that in the early 1900s and before that, there was no concept of the weekend. We had to fight for it. Framing this as something that's wild allows the player to recontextualize their knowledge. And then we add,
or, even crazier, working 4 days and resting for 3.
And now they're forced to flip to the idea that since a 2-day weekend literally exists, so must a 3-day weekend be possible. Number 3, prime empowerment through confrontation. The first chapter of our game starts with a 5-minute cutscene that we wrote so you hate the supervisor. He's an asshole who's abusing your power dynamic and deliberately puts you on edge by making terrible jokes about how he'll fire you, which makes chasing after him so much more fun and so much more cathartic. It's always important to prime your players for the emotion you want them to feel. If you want to make them feel strong, you have to make them feel weak. And last but not least, number 4, model positive worlds. The epilogue of the game is entirely dedicated to modeling realistic positive behavior. We want to focus on making people feel good, and we want to show a good ending to remind people and give them a taste of what they can have if they are willing to fight for it. The kind of workplace that can and does exist. And this taste is what allows people to fight. So let us dream big, beautiful dreams, and bring hope by letting people have a taste of a better life. Let's make games that don't just make awareness, but actually empower. Of course, games cannot solve everything, and systemic issues require real resources to solve, but we live in a world of plenty with enough resources and post-scarcity technologies that are unfairly distributed. We lack the will due to greed. Let us remind each other of the power that we all have to change the world for the betterment of all humanity. Thank you for your time. I'm Brenden Gibbons. You can find me on Twitter at Brenden Gibbons, and I hope you have a wonderful day, afternoon, and evening. Bye!
Say no more! Out, no! I mean, now! Out, now!
Thank you for watching.